This week on How to Drink, we're making a cocktail based on one of the greatest comedies of all time. I'm talking about Some Like It Hot, starring Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, Marylin Monroe, George Raft, and Joey Brown. We're making a hot water bottle, corn whiskey Manhattan in a sleeper car. Something like it hot, I suppose. So 1959, Something Like It Hot comes out. This is a Billy Wilder film starring Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon as a pair of down-on-their-luck jazz musicians in the roaring 20s Chicago happen to witness a brutal gangland slaying reminiscent of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and have to go on the lam. They run to Florida posing as lady musicians in an all-girl traveling jazz band.
Jacksonville and Miami, all aboard, all aboard.
Marylin Monroe is in this film as Sugar Kane, great name, incredible name. What would you call her? A flibbity-gibbet, party gal. She knows how to have a good time. She, of course, is the object of desire of our two leads, and hijinks ensue as Tony Curtis attempts to juggle multiple personas to get himself closer and closer to Sugar Kane.
This is my friend Daphne. She's a Vassar girl.
I'm a what?
Or was it Bryn Mawr?
I heard a very sad story about a girl who went to Bryn Mawr. She squealed on her roommate, and they found her strangled with her own brassiere.
Marylin Monroe was famously difficult to work with on this film. I don't know how much of this you can take with a grain of salt or not. Billy Wilder does strike me as the kind of guy who might have been a little vindictive. She was not invited to the wrap party. She was very hurt by that. Somebody at the studio had to explain to her that you had literally cost the film's budget $500,000 by refusing to come to set on time or know your lines. There's numerous times in the film where she did not know her lines, and they would use cue cards. As a matter of fact, in the climactic phone call of the film, you can see her eyes darting left to right as she reads off of a blackboard her lines.
I had the most wonderful dream. I was still on the yacht and the anchor broke loose. We drifted for days and days. You were the captain and I was the crew. I kept a lookout for icebergs. I sorted your shells and mixed your cocktails.
Billy Wilder said of her that it takes a real artist to come to set without knowing your lines and deliver that kind of performance. It seems like a very backhanded compliment. Tony Curtis remarked, "I had never known any actress who used their talents more fully than Marylin Monroe," which sounds very nice, but when you think about it, it's kind of another backhanded compliment. I think they're both assholes about that because the movie simply won't work without Marylin Monroe in the role. And you need, in order for the film to work, you need actually not just her performance, but her identity in a meta sense outside of the film. You need a Marylin Monroe in the role. The audience knows who Marylin Monroe is my point, and you need a person who can fulfill that in that same way for the movie to work. The film did not run in Kansas. The Kansas Board of Censors said that, quote, "cross-dressing is just too disturbing for Kansans."
If I promise not to be a naughty boy, how about dinner tonight? I'm sorry, I'll be on the bandstand. Oh, of course. Which of these instruments do you play? Bull fiddle. Oh, fascinating. Do you use a bow or do you just pluck it? Most of the time, I slap it.
So when the film was tested in Hollywood, audience goers got up and walked out partway through. It bombed. It performed terribly. And Jack Lemmon, supposedly, went to Billy Wilder very upset, was very concerned. He asked him, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? What are you going to change in the film?" And Billy Wilder said, "Nothing. This is a great movie. That audience doesn't know what's up. Maybe it's just the wrong neighborhood for this movie." They tested it again in, I think it was Westfield, which is another neighborhood in the area, and it blew the doors off. It was an incredible hit. As a matter of fact, on that test, when Jack Lemmon announces that he is engaged to Joey Brown's character, the audience erupted into such laughter that the following subsequent lines of dialogue couldn't be heard. They had to reshoot the scene with a maracas gag to give an excuse to put pauses in between the lines so that they could time the scene to audience laughter and reaction so that lines would actually be heard, otherwise they'd be lost. So that was the one reshoot. It was just too damn funny. We had to slow it down. I think that's amazing. That said, What the hell have I been talking about forever? I've been talking about this movie. There's a scene in the movie when our intrepid drag queens first encounter Sugar Kane. They're on the sleeper car. The mother hen of the band is out of sight. We find out that the girls have a secret cache of hooch, and they're gonna all bunk up together and get drunk on Manhattans. Now, a couple things about that scene. One, they're looking specifically for bourbon in a Manhattan, and you typically don't make a Manhattan with bourbon. A better Manhattan is, most Manhattans are typically made with rye, but it's also during Prohibition, and I kind of wonder about the bourbon that they've got there. I wonder if it's bourbon. So I'm actually gonna make this Manhattan with Mellow Corn, which is something that some of you have commented about seeing on my shelf a number of times. I think this is a great value. It's bottled in bond. Makes a great whiskey sour. I love this stuff, and it's like $8 a bottle. I think if we're trying to reproduce Prohibition hooch, this is probably not a bad way to go. And I should say, it's not bad. This would be like good hooch, you know. Okay, let's make the drink. First thing we're gonna need is a cocktail shaker. I'm gonna shake it up in this hot water bottle. I've never made a drink in a hot water bottle before. And why am I now? Well, because that's how they do it in the film. It's not a great answer for that, you know.
Here's the cocktail shaker. I wish we had some ice. Hey, easy on the vermouth.
And very possibly, this is going to be so gross that I'm going to redo this. You know, it's possible that we're going to get some real wonderful flavors from my hot water bottle here. 1.5 ounces of Mellow Corn into my cocktail shaker. 1.5 ounces of my vermouth. So we're going to go equal parts. For bitters, we're gonna go with a couple dashes of orange bitters and 1 dash of Angostura bitters. Yeah, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be fantastic. And now I wanna get some ice in there. The opening is not large enough to use anything other than crushed ice. So that's all right, that's all right. We're on a sleeper car, we gotta make do with what we got here. There we go. Get it in there. Get it all in there. If you look at these older films, they'll shake a lot of drinks that we don't normally shake. We don't shake Manhattans, we don't shake martinis. But if you notice how they shake in those movies, they're just kind of swirling them around with the ice. They don't really go aggressively. It's just sort of a nice jostle. That's basically the same thing as stirring. If you're not really injecting air into it, there's very little difference in the physics of what's going on. Now, this is complete. Let's pour this out now. I estimated how much crushed ice would be exactly correct because, of course, with crushed ice, which is the only kind of ice I can fit in here, we're going to go to completion. And based on that wash line, I fucking nailed it. Somehow, on that train, they don't manage to have a real cocktail shaker, but they did have maraschino cherries, so let's garnish it up the way she done. A twist of orange would certainly not be a bad choice as a garnish here, but we did go with an orange bitters, so I feel like we're kind of already getting a lot of those citrus notes. Okay, here we have my Some Like It Hot corn whiskey Manhattan made in a hot water bottle. It's perfect. It's a fantastic Manhattan, actually. The Punta Mez, first off, I want to comment, I don't taste the water bottle at all, so it's a great gag if you ever decide you want to pull it off. I did rinse that with hot and water like numerous times before I used it, so if there was any kind of residual mold release in there or something like that, we got it out. But I don't taste the rubber, so that's nice. If you read Imbibe, if you look at what David Wondrich says about a Manhattan, he says that rye, bourbon, whiskey probably doesn't matter. The thing that really matters is making sure you're using a 100 proof whiskey, rye, or bourbon. That's the key to making a great Manhattan. So I don't think that we can go wrong with the Mellow Corn here. I do think that when you're looking at your vermouth that you're gonna pair with your whiskey, bourbon, corn whiskey, hooch, white lightning of choice, you should consider that. So normally you make this with a rye, and then I would use a much sweeter, I would use my preferred Manhattan is gonna be a rye Antica, rye and Antica Manhattan. But if I'm gonna make it with corn whiskey, the Punta Mez, and I'll do a little quick swiggy-doo. It carries a little bit more spiciness than a sweet vermouth does a lot of times. I like the notes here. They kind of complement each other. This is filling in some of the voids left by the lack of rye. And a couple dashes of orange bitters and one of the Angostura. It really rounds it all out. So, tasting notes, if I can. Vermouth spice is up front with the Angostura kind of extending that. Get some of that cinnamon and allspice stuff going on there from the Angostura. That settles into corn, sweet corn. Not much of the citrus, which is funny because I put a fairly large amount of orange bitters in there. So maybe we could jazz this up further with a twist of orange on it. I think that might actually help the drink. Honestly, not a bad addition, but it's not, it doesn't make or break it. It does add an extra note of orange to the drink in the evolution, but it's no better than it was before. It's a good Manhattan either way. I'll take or leave it. I'm gonna leave it. It's gone. One Oscar the film won was for costume design. Ori Kelly, of course, made the gowns. Hilariously, while fitting Marylin Monroe in her dress, commented to her snidely that Tony Curtis has a nicer ass than you. Marylin Monroe famously turned around, drove her tits into his face, and said, "Yeah, but does he have tits like these?" I love that. I like to think that those two went out for drinks after that. Different kind of Manhattan. A Manhattan made otherwise. I'll Some Like It Hot. Probably one of my top 10 favorite movies, and certainly the American Film Institute's top 10 favorite movies. We made it in a rubber bag because that's how they did it in the movie. Very, very bold move, bold dating advice. You know, tell your significant, tell the object of your desire that, no, truly, I feel nothing. I am incapable of physical emotion. Try it. Women have kissed me hundreds of times, nothing. No action at all from below the waist. And, challenger, put that on the table. Ladies love that.